AITA for refusing to let my sister's wedding ruin my career. I, 29F, have a sister, Hannah, 26F, who is getting married in a few months. I should start by saying we've never been close. We don't hate each other or anything, but we've always had a strained relationship. Growing up, I was the responsible, hardworking one who took care of everything at home, while Hannah was the more carefree, party-loving type. She didn't do much around the house, and as we got older, I found myself doing more and more of the emotional labor for our family. My parents were usually pretty hands-off, and I was always the one to step up when something needed to be done. Fast forward to now, and Hannah is getting married to her fiancé, Chris, 28M, and I've been asked to be a bridesmaid. I'll admit, I wasn't thrilled at the idea. Not because I didn't want to support her, but because of everything that comes with being a bridesmaid, especially with her being the kind of person who tends to be demanding and dramatic. I work in a very high-pressure, fast-paced job. I'm an attorney, and I've spent the last few years building my career. I work my ass off for promotions, and my job often requires long hours, weekends, and a lot of stress. The last thing I needed was to take on extra responsibilities for a wedding, especially when I felt like I was being expected to do so out of obligation, not genuine closeness. Anyway, a few weeks ago, Hannah came to me with some big requests for the wedding. She asked me to help pay for some of the costs, specifically for her bachelorette party and a few other miscellaneous expenses. While I'm not broke, I'm also not in a position to drop thousands of dollars for a wedding. She mentioned that I was the only one of her siblings who could help out, which felt like an emotional guilt trip. I didn't immediately say no, but I told her I'd have to check my schedule and make sure I could actually take time off to help out. The thing is, my job has a very strict policy about taking time off during certain periods, and the date she picked for her wedding overlaps with a major case I'm working on. This case could make or break my career, and if I miss it, I risk losing the opportunity for a huge promotion. When I brought this up to Hannah, she was not happy. She told me I was being selfish and that family should come first. I understand the sentiment, but my career is also a huge part of my life, and I don't think she really understood the pressure I was under. I explained to her that I couldn't take the time off during her wedding week, and I wasn't in a position to drop all of my work responsibilities for a few days just to be there. I suggested she might want to ask one of our cousins or friends to step in as a bridesmaid if I couldn't be there for certain parts of the wedding. This led to an argument. Hannah accused me of ruining her wedding and said that I was making it all about work instead of supporting her as her sister. I tried to explain that I wasn't saying I wouldn't attend, but that I just couldn't do everything she was asking without compromising my professional life. She said I should figure it out because she didn't want to be embarrassed by me not being there. The more we talked, the more unreasonable her request became. She wanted me to take time off work for her bachelorette party, which was a whole weekend away. I would need to book flights and accommodations, pay for activities, and I would also be expected to help her with various tasks in the lead-up to the wedding. By the time the conversation ended, I felt completely drained. I wanted to support my sister, but I was honestly starting to feel like I was being taken advantage of. I felt like she didn't respect my time or my career and was just looking at me as another resource to fund her dream wedding. I talked to my parents about the situation, and they took Hannah's side. They told me I should be prioritizing family and that I was being too harsh. They reminded me how much Hannah had looked up to me growing up and how much she wanted me to be involved in her special day. I told them I understood that, but that I didn't think I should have to sacrifice my career for her wedding. A few days later, Hannah sent me a long message saying how disappointed she was in me, how I was being selfish, and how she thought I'd support her, just like she had supported me in the past. She pointed out that I had been there for her when she had health issues last year, and that she couldn't understand why I couldn't do the same for her now. I felt guilty reading it, but at the same time, I knew deep down that I wasn't in the wrong. She was asking too much. Since then, we haven't spoken much. The wedding is fast approaching, and I'm getting more anxious about what to do. I'm definitely going to the wedding itself, but I don't feel like I can commit to all of the other events and financial responsibilities she's expecting of me. I don't want to be the sister who ruins her big day, but I also don't want to destroy my career over something that feels more like an obligation than a joy. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's wedding ruin my career and personal life. I just want to know if I'm being unreasonable for setting boundaries, or if I should be doing more to make sure she's happy, even at the expense of my own professional goals. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she chose to have her ex-husband as the best man. Okay, so let me explain. I, 29F, have an older sister, Karen, 33F, who got married to her now ex-husband, Jake, 35M, 5 years ago. They were married for almost 3 years before they got divorced. Their relationship was pretty toxic, honestly. He had a lot of issues with commitment. He was emotionally abusive, and there were some infidelities along the way. It was a mess. The divorce was long and ugly, and Karen and Jake haven't spoken since it ended. None of our family, including me, have had much to do with him since the divorce. The thing is, Karen and Jake were really close growing up. They were best friends, and even after their divorce, Karen couldn't quite seem to let go of the idea that he was part of the family. After their split, Karen said she'd never speak to him again, but she kept making excuses for him in private. She would complain about him to our parents, but then I would find out later that she had been talking to him or even hanging out with him in secret. This brings us to the present. Karen is getting remarried in a few months to a guy named Mike, 36M, who seems like a great guy. They've been together for over 2 years, and I genuinely like him. He's kind, supportive, and treats Karen with so much respect. When they announced their engagement, we were all happy for them. There was just one thing that threw me off. Karen asked Jake to be her best man. I was shocked. Everyone in the family was shocked. Karen explained that she and Jake had worked through a lot of their issues and that he had really changed. She said he'd been there for her during some tough times in the last couple of years, and she wanted to honor the friendship they used to have by having him stand by her side at the wedding. She said it was a symbolic gesture of forgiveness and moving forward. At first, I thought it was a joke, but when I realized she was serious, I couldn't believe it. I tried to express how uncomfortable it made me, but Karen brushed it off. She said I was being too harsh and that it wasn't about me. It was about her and her relationship with Jake. She asked me to respect her decision and that if I loved her, I would support it. But I couldn't. The idea of Jake standing at the altar, not as a guest, but as the best man, just felt wrong. It was triggering for me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was disrespectful to Mike, too. I mean, imagine being the fiancé and having your wife's ex-husband standing beside her on her wedding day. It just fell off. I spoke to my parents, and they were equally uncomfortable. They couldn't understand why Karen would do this, especially after everything Jake had put her through. They both said they would not attend the wedding if Jake was part of it in such an important role. I didn't feel comfortable attending either. I told Karen that I wouldn't be able to make it if Jake was the best man. I told her it wasn't about hating him, but I just couldn't get past the way he treated her and the fact that he had been such a negative force in her life. Karen was livid. She called me selfish and said that I was making her special day about me. She said that she wasn't asking me to forgive Jake, just to support her in her decision. She accused me of being controlling, trying to dictate her life, and that I was more concerned with my feelings than her happiness. At this point, the whole thing escalated. The rest of our family weighed in, and there was a lot of back and forth. My cousins and aunts were split. Some were firmly in my camp, saying that having Jake at the wedding was wrong, while others supported Karen, saying that she was an adult and could make her own choices. There was a lot of tension in our family over this. I eventually sent Karen a message, letting her know that I wasn't going to change my mind, and I wouldn't be coming to the wedding if Jake was part of it. I also told her that I loved her and that I respected her choices, but I couldn't support this one. I told her I would be happy to meet Mike and Jake in a different context, just not at the wedding. Karen hasn't spoken to me since. She's upset, and she hasn't responded to my messages. She's posted several things on social media, tagging me in passive-aggressive posts about how hurt she is by my decision. She has even told our parents that I'm the one who's causing drama, and they've been pressuring me to apologize. I feel terrible about the rift this has caused, but at the same time, I just can't shake the feeling that I'm in the right. I know Karen has her reasons for wanting Jake there, but I also feel like she's disregarding my feelings completely. It's a tough situation because I love my sister and I want to support her, but I just don't think I can in this case. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she chose to have her ex-husband as the best man. AITA for kicking my brother out after he made fun of my wedding dress. 29F, recently got married to my husband, Sam, 32M, in a small, intimate ceremony with close family and friends. It was a really special day for us, especially since Sam and I had been through a lot in the past couple of years. I wanted everything to be perfect, and my dress was something I put a lot of thought into. It wasn't a traditional white gown. I knew from the start I didn't want a big, fluffy ball gown or anything over the top. I opted for a beautiful, custom-made silk dress that was a soft blush pink with a simple, elegant design. It wasn't flashy, but it fit me perfectly, and I felt amazing in it. Now, let me give you some background on my family. I have a younger brother, Eric, 26M, who has always been the type to make a lot of sarcastic remarks, especially about things that don't fit his very specific sense of humor. Growing up, he was always the joker, always the one cracking jokes about whatever was going on in the room. Sometimes he can be funny, but it's usually at the expense of others, and I've learned to take it with a grain of salt over the years. My parents have always sort of enabled him and let him get away with his behavior, which, in my opinion, isn't great, but whatever. Eric and I don't have a super close relationship. He's a bit of a wild card, and I've always been more serious and reserved. Still, we've managed to stay civil for family events and holidays, so I thought everything would go smoothly at my wedding. I invited him, of course, and made sure he knew how important the day was to me. He said he'd be there, and while I wasn't expecting him to have a huge emotional response or anything, I did hope he would at least be respectful. The day of the wedding, everything was going as planned. The ceremony was beautiful, and I felt like $1,000,000 in my dress. I was surrounded by the people I love, and I felt at peace. The reception was small but fun, great food, music, and laughter. Then, about halfway through the evening, my brother decided to make his grand entrance. He was a little late, which, honestly, was nothing new for him. But when he walked in, he immediately went up to my parents and started cracking jokes about my wedding dress. "Wow, sis, I didn't know we were getting married at a prom," he said loudly, gesturing toward my dress. "Is this the dress for someone who just got out of high school?" I was taken aback. I mean, Eric has a sense of humor, but this was my wedding, and I had spent so much time choosing something that felt like me, something that wasn't a cookie-cutter gown. I was hurt, but I tried to brush it off. The wedding wasn't about him, and I didn't want to let one remark ruin the evening. However, then just kept going. As the night went on, Eric made several other comments, each more pointed than the last. At one point, I was chatting with a few of my friends, and he came up to me with this smug look on his face and said, "So, are you sure you don't want to change into something less embarrassing? You know, something more wedding-y?" I tried to smile and said, "Eric, I love my dress. It's exactly what I wanted." But he didn't drop it. Sure. I mean, you're the bride, but it looks like a dress you'd wear to a tea party with your grandma, not a wedding." I felt my stomach tighten. This wasn't just him being funny anymore. This was clearly a dig at me and my choices. And honestly, at this point, I was done. I had made it clear that I didn't want a traditional wedding, and yet my brother was treating it like some kind of joke. I started to feel like maybe this wasn't the place for him. So I walked over to him and said, "Eric, I think it's time for you to go." He gave me this incredulous look. "What? You're kicking me out over a joke?" I nodded. "I'm serious. I don't want you here if you're going to continue making fun of me and my dress. This is my wedding, and I won't tolerate being disrespected on my day." There was a long silence. I don't think he expected me to call him out like that. Everyone around us was starting to notice, and it was getting awkward. I could see my parents in the background looking uncomfortable, but they didn't intervene. Eventually, Eric scoffed and said, "Fine, whatever," and stormed off. At that point, I was a little shaken. I hadn't expected him to react like that, but I also wasn't going to let him ruin my special day. After he left, the rest of the evening was much more relaxed. I enjoyed myself and didn't let his behavior get to me anymore. However, the fallout has been worse than I expected. My parents are upset with me for kicking Eric out, saying I overreacted and that he was just trying to be funny. They've been calling me, texting me, and even showing up at my house to tell me I made a huge mistake. They think I should have just let it go and not ruin the family dynamic by kicking him out of my wedding. They've even suggested that I should apologize to him for blowing things out of proportion. On the other hand, my friends and Sam's family have all been really supportive, saying I did the right thing by standing up for myself and setting boundaries. But it's hard to ignore the guilt that my parents keep putting on me. Now, I'm wondering if I overreacted. Was it wrong to kick my brother out over some jokes about my dress? Was I being too sensitive? Or is this just part of the bigger pattern of him being disrespectful that I've had to put up with for years? AITA for kicking my brother out of my wedding after his comments about my dress. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she called me a failure for not meeting her expectations. So, to give a bit of background, I, 29F, have a younger sister, Emma, 26F, who's always been the golden child of the family. She's always been the overachiever, the one with the perfect grades, perfect job, perfect boyfriend, and now the perfect wedding. I, on the other hand, have always been a bit more chaotic. I didn't do as well in school as she did. I didn't follow a traditional career path, and honestly, I've always felt like the black sheep of the family. I work as a freelance graphic designer, which is a great job for me, but it doesn't come with the stability or prestige that Emma's lawyer career offers. I've always been fine with the difference in our paths. I'm happy with my life. But Emma, from a young age, has never been particularly accepting of my choices. She's always made comments about how I could do better, how I should get a real job, and how I need to grow up. To make things worse, our parents have always favored her, so I've spent most of my life being compared to her. I've had my moments where I resented it, but I've mostly tried to let it roll off my back. Recently, Emma got engaged to a guy named Tom, who I actually really like. He's kind, funny, and treats her well. Honestly, I was happy for them when they got engaged, but it didn't take long for things to go south. Her wedding planning became an event in itself. She was determined to have the perfect wedding. Everything had to be flawless. From the venue to the dress to the guest list, every detail had to be exactly how she envisioned it. She even hired a wedding planner, who was way over her budget, just to make sure everything was Instagram-worthy. A few months ago, Emma called me up to ask if I would be her maid of honor. I was honestly shocked because, as I mentioned, we've never been particularly close, and I thought she would choose one of her childhood friends. But she said she wanted to make it official, and I agreed. I thought maybe this could be a way to bond and strengthen our relationship. Big mistake. The next few months were pure chaos. Emma had me running around doing a million things, from addressing invitations to helping her pick out the perfect tablecloths to dealing with her panic attacks over every little thing. She's not the easiest person to work with when she's stressed, and every decision had to be made according to her exact specifications. When I tried to offer my own input or suggest alternatives, she'd shut me down immediately. "This isn't about you," she would say. "This is my wedding, not yours." I get it. I get that it's her big day, and she wants everything to go perfectly. But it felt like every time I tried to offer any help, it was dismissed as unimportant or worse, as not good enough. Now, the final straw came last weekend. We were at a family dinner, and Emma was talking about her wedding plans again. She was venting about how much stress the wedding was causing her, and I tried to offer some words of encouragement. I said something along the lines of, "It's okay if everything isn't perfect. The most important thing is that you and Tom are happy." She snapped at me immediately. "Of course, everything has to be perfect. This is the one time I get to do everything exactly how I want. You wouldn't understand because you're such a failure. You don't have your life together. You don't have a career, a house, a stable relationship. You're just lost." I was stunned. I don't even remember what I said back, but I know I walked out of the dinner early and didn't talk to her for days. I was so hurt and frustrated. She has always been critical, but this felt like a step too far. My parents, of course, took her side. They said I needed to be more understanding of the pressure Emma was under, and I should just let it go. But I can't. I've been dealing with this for years. The comparison, the judgment, the feeling like I'm not enough. I'm tired of it. I've since told Emma that I wouldn't be attending her wedding. I'm not going to pretend everything is fine when she's made me feel like I'm not even worthy of being part of her life. She's the one who called me a failure, and now she's upset that I don't want to be there for her big day. Now, my family is furious with me. They keep telling me that I'm being petty and that I should grow up and support my sister. But honestly, I feel like I've supported her my whole life. I put up with her putting me down, and now I'm done. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she called me a failure and made me feel like I'm nothing. I, 29F, have a younger sister, Lily, 25F, who has always had a bit of a complicated relationship with responsibility. We grew up in a pretty chaotic household, so while I took on a more mature role, Lily was more carefree. I don't want to paint her as a bad person. She's funny, generous, and always good-natured, but when it comes to making good life choices, she often falls short. A couple of years ago, she moved into an apartment with her boyfriend, Dan, 28M. At first, things seemed okay. They were both working regular jobs, and I figured they were making it work. However, over time, I started hearing things that made me worry about their living situation. Lily started missing rent payments, and Dan, who had a better job, was picking up the slack. I tried to be supportive, telling her she needed to get her finances under control, but she brushed me off, saying that she would figure it out. Fast forward to a few weeks ago. I got a call from Lily, and she was in tears. She told me that she and Dan had gotten into a huge argument, and she was kicked out of the apartment. Apparently, she had stopped contributing to the rent for a few months, saying she was saving up for a big trip, which she never went on, and Dan had finally had enough. He asked her to leave, and she had nowhere to go. She asked if she could stay with me for a while. Now, here's where I might be the asshole. I told her no. I know it sounds cold, but I've been in a similar situation before. A few years ago, I let Lily stay with me for about 3 months when she was going through a rough patch. It was meant to be temporary, but she ended up staying for over 6 months. During that time, I had to pick up after her, remind her to pay bills, and even cover a few expenses when she couldn't make ends meet. It got to the point where it felt like I was her personal safety net, and it was incredibly draining on me, emotionally and financially. When I told her I couldn't do it again, she was absolutely crushed. She said she had nowhere else to go, and that she didn't want to end up on the streets. I told her that she needed to take responsibility for her actions and figure something out. She suggested moving back in with our parents, but I know they're already dealing with their own issues and won't be able to offer her a place to stay for long. I wasn't sure if I was being too harsh, but I couldn't go through it again. I've worked hard to build my life, and I don't want to be the one who constantly picks up the pieces for her. I also told her that it's important she learns how to be independent and not rely on other people to bail her out every time she messes up. After all, she's an adult, and I can't keep enabling her behavior. Our parents have been texting me, telling me that I'm being too hard on her and that I should at least let her stay for a few weeks while she gets back on her feet. They say that family sticks together, but honestly, I feel like I've been more than generous in the past. My friends are split. They think I'm justified, but some feel like I should do more to help her. I feel conflicted. On one hand, I know I've already helped her a lot in the past, and I can't keep putting my life on hold for her mistakes. But on the other hand, I know she's in a really tough spot right now. I'm not heartless, and I feel guilty for not offering to help her more. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me again? I feel like I might be coming off as cruel, but I honestly don't know if I'm being too hard on her. Okay, so here's the situation. I, 29F, have been planning my wedding for over a year now. I'm marrying my fiancé, Jake, 31M, in a couple of months. We've been together for almost 5 years, and this is honestly the happiest I've ever been. But of course, as with any big event, there's been some drama. Specifically with my brother, Matt, 32M, and his girlfriend, Erica, 30F. Matt and Erica have been together for about 3 years, and while I get along with Erica, she's always had a bit of a dominant personality. At first, I thought it was just because she's really confident, but lately, it's become clear that she has a tendency to overstep boundaries, especially when it comes to anything related to the wedding. The first issue came up when we were discussing the guest list. I had already made a list of everyone I wanted to invite: family, close friends, and a few colleagues. I didn't think it was anything outrageous. I sent out the initial invitations about 3 months ago. Well, a week later, Matt calls me, and he's super upset because he and Erica weren't on the guest list. Now, I knew why. I had initially invited them, but I've always had a tense relationship with Matt. Growing up, he was always the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I've often felt overshadowed by him, and that tension hasn't really faded with age. So, I wasn't exactly thrilled to invite him. But out of obligation and because it was the right thing to do, I put him on the guest list, though I was really hoping it wouldn't come to that. When Matt called to complain, he said that it was ridiculous for me to not invite Erica as well. He argued that they were a package deal and that Erica had been part of the family for years now. I was a little taken aback by his aggressiveness, but I figured I'd try to be civil and offer to put Erica on the list, though I really didn't want her there either. I wasn't close with her, and frankly, I didn't want her to make the wedding about herself, as I've seen her do before at other family events. Matt didn't take it well when I said that I had a right to invite who I wanted. He ended up getting even more upset and suggested that maybe he shouldn't come at all, since Erica was being excluded. I explained that I was just trying to keep things simple, but he insisted that Erica was a part of their family unit, so if she wasn't invited, then neither would he be. Eventually, I caved. I added Erica to the guest list and thought that would be the end of it. Big mistake. A couple of weeks later, my wedding planner called me about an issue. Apparently, Matt and Erica had emailed her directly, asking for some specific changes to the seating arrangement. They wanted to be seated at the front, near the altar, because Erica said she felt special and wanted to be part of the inner circle. I was shocked. This was MY Wedding, and the seating arrangement had already been finalized. I told my planner to ignore their request, but the next thing I knew, Erica had posted on social media about how excited she was to be attending a royal wedding and couldn't wait to be front and center. I was so irritated at this point, but didn't end there. A week ago, I received a call from Erica herself. She told me that she had been talking with a friend in the industry, and that she had found an amazing wedding dress designer who could make her a custom outfit to match the theme of my wedding. I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was suggesting that she wear a dress that was similar to mine. When I told her that I didn't want anyone upstaging me on my big day, she laughed it off and said, "Oh, don't worry. I wouldn't steal your spotlight, but I think it'll be a nice touch for the photos." At that point, I was livid. I told her no, absolutely not. She could wear whatever she wanted, but she was not going to show up in a dress that resembled mine in any way. She tried to argue, but I stood my ground. When I told Matt about the conversation, he got upset with me and said I was being controlling. He told me I should just let Erica have her moment, since she's been part of the family for so long. After that, I reached my breaking point. I called up Matt and told him that because of all the issues they had caused, they were no longer invited to my wedding. I explained that I had been more than accommodating, but I couldn't allow anyone to make my day about them. I told him that if he couldn't respect my boundaries, then he and Erica weren't welcome. He tried to argue, but I hung up on him. The fallout has been intense. My parents have been calling me nonstop, telling me that I'm being too harsh and that family is family. They think I should just let it go for the sake of peace and that Matt is hurt by my decision. My fiancé is completely supportive of my choice, and he's standing by me, but my extended family has been giving me the cold shoulder. Some friends are also telling me I'm being too extreme and that I should just let Matt and Erica have their way for one day, but I'm starting to doubt myself. I never wanted to be the bridezilla, but at this point, I feel like they've crossed so many boundaries that I can't just let it go. So Reddit, AITA for kicking out my brother and his girlfriend from my wedding after they tried to control everything. So, here's the situation. I, 28F, have a brother, let's call him Josh, 32M, who recently announced that he was getting married. He and his fiancée, Amanda, 30F, decided on a destination wedding in a small, remote village in the mountains. Sounds nice, right? Well, there's more to the story. When they first told us, we were all excited for them. It was going to be a beautiful, intimate ceremony. They sent out the invites, and when I received mine, I was both surprised and a little confused. The location was at least a 12-hour flight from where we live, and then there was a full day of travel just to get to the village. On top of that, the accommodations they had arranged were at best rustic. The village didn't have proper hotels, so everyone had to stay in these makeshift goose houses. Most of them had no modern amenities. You're talking no Wi-Fi, barely functional bathrooms, and no air conditioning. It's important to note that this village is in the middle of nowhere with no real transportation infrastructure, so everyone would be stuck without cars. I understand that a destination wedding is supposed to be unique, but this felt more like an inconvenience than a celebration. My parents, who were in their mid-50s, were both in poor health. My mom has knee issues, and my dad has heart problems. There was no way they could manage that kind of travel. On top of that, I have 2 young kids, ages 4 and 6, and I just couldn't see how I could take them on such a long, grueling trip for a wedding that I wasn't even sure I wanted to attend in the first place. My husband, 34M, was also less than thrilled about it, and we both knew that a trip like that was going to be both emotionally and financially exhausting for everyone involved. When I expressed my concerns to Josh, he seemed to brush them off. He told me that the wedding was meant to be an adventure and that we should just make it work. He even suggested that I leave my kids behind with my parents and come alone, but that wasn't going to happen. I don't feel comfortable leaving my kids behind for something like this, especially with how remote the location was. I don't even trust the idea of them being cared for by people who aren't in the best health themselves. So I told Josh that I couldn't make it. I offer an alternative. I would be happy to send them a thoughtful gift, and we could have a big family celebration once they return from their wedding. I would even help with planning a reception for those who couldn't make it to the destination. It felt like a reasonable compromise, both to respect my own boundaries and the reality of my family situation. Well, Josh lost it. He told me I was being selfish and that I was ruining his big day. He accused me of not caring about his happiness, and that if I really loved him, I would find a way to be there, no matter what. He said that everyone else was making the trip, so I should stop making excuses. I pointed out that his fiance's side of the family was mostly younger and healthier, so it was easier for them to travel, but that didn't seem to matter. Over the next few days, the entire family began weighing in. My parents, who were initially sympathetic to my concerns, ended up backing Josh up. They kept telling me that family is important, and I should make the sacrifice for my brother's happiness. Even my husband started feeling guilty, like I was somehow letting Josh down, though he agreed with me that it wasn't a practical situation. I felt completely stuck. I couldn't get anyone to see my side. Then came the guilt tripping. Josh's fiancée, Amanda, reached out to me and said that I was ruining the whole vibe of their wedding by not attending. She even went so far as to say that if I didn't come, it would make her feel disrespected and hurt because they were making all these arrangements to make the trip easy for everyone. I'm not sure how a village with no proper roads and a place that couldn't even promise running water was supposed to be easy, but I felt like I was being manipulated. The final straw was when Josh sent me a message that said, "If you can't be there for me now, when will you ever be?" That hit hard. I love my brother, but I can't justify putting my kids and my family through so much for a wedding that felt more like an inconvenience. And to be clear, I would have gone to a wedding closer to home, or even one with a more accessible location, but this felt like a step too far. I'm now feeling really isolated in this situation. I've had people in my family start taking sides, with some saying I'm being unreasonable and others agreeing that Josh and Amanda are being a bit extreme with their wedding plans. My best friend, who I confided in, thinks I'm in the right, but I don't know if I should be doing more to repair the relationship with my brother. I've heard through the grapevine that Josh is telling people I'm a bad sister for not making the effort, and that's only making me feel worse. So, AITA for refusing to go to my brother's wedding? Was I wrong for not doing whatever it took to be there, even if it meant putting my family's needs aside? Am I selfish for thinking that the wedding plans were unreasonable? AITA for confronting my fiancé over his work trips after finding out he's been spending the nights with his ex? 28F, have been in a relationship with my fiancé, 31M, Jake, for about 3 years now. We've been living together for almost 2, and we've always had a pretty strong bond, or so I thought. We've had our ups and downs, but like any couple, we've always tried to work through things. However, recently, I found out something that has completely shattered my trust in him, and I need some perspective on whether or not I overreacted. Jake has a job that involves a lot of travel. He's often away for business, and I've never really had an issue with it since he's always been very open about his trips and what he's doing. That was until about 6 months ago when he started going on more last-minute work trips. These trips always seemed to come up right after we had plans to spend time together, which started raising some red flags. But I try to brush it off. He's been with this company for a while, and it's a demanding role. He would usually text or call to check in during the evening, and we'd talk briefly, but I didn't think much of it. About a month ago, something happened that really threw me off. I was at home and decided to clean out the drawer where we keep important documents. I came across a business card for a hotel in a city I didn't recognize. The card had Jake's name on it, and it was from a hotel in a place he'd mentioned as one of the cities he'd be traveling to for a work trip a few weeks earlier. What struck me as odd was the date on the card. According to Jake, he had returned home the day before, but the date on the card was for the day after he'd supposedly gotten back. My heart sank. I tried to let it go for a couple of days, but it gnawed at me. Something didn't add up, so I decided to go through his phone. I know. This is where it all starts to get messy, but I was desperate for answers. I didn't find anything super incriminating at first, but I did notice some text messages from an unsaved number. After some digging, I realized the number belonged to his ex, Sarah. Now, let me give you a bit of backstory on Sarah. Jake and Sarah dated for about 5 years before we got together, and though they broke up about 3 years ago, I've always known they remained on good terms. They would occasionally text, but nothing that seemed out of the ordinary. I never felt threatened by their friendship, but these texts were different. In the messages, they spoke casually at first, but as I scrolled through the conversation, I noticed that they were planning to meet up. Jake had been texting her while he was away on business, not just about work. He was making plans to meet up with her and even talked about how they could pick up where they left off. The messages were flirtatious, and there was talk about meeting up at the hotel I had found the card for. I was heartbroken, angry, confused, and just completely floored by what I had found. I knew I needed to confront him, but I didn't know how to approach it. I was so unsure about everything. Did he feel guilty about it? Was he planning on breaking up with me? I wasn't sure what his intentions were, but I knew I had to get to the bottom of it. I waited for Jake to come home that night. He was late, as usual, which only made my anxiety worse. When he walked in, I just couldn't hold it in anymore. I confronted him immediately, showing him the business card, the texts, everything. I asked him flat out if he had been seeing Sarah behind my back. Jake went pale. His first reaction was to deny everything. He claimed I was overreacting, that the texts were just innocent catch-up conversations, and that it was no big deal. He explained the hotel card by saying it was for a work conference he had gone to, and he had just forgotten it in his bag. But he couldn't explain away the timing of it all. I pressed him harder, and after a few minutes of him avoiding the question, he finally admitted that he had met up with Sarah during one of his work trips, and that they had spent the night together in the hotel. He said it was a one-time mistake, and that he was sorry. I was devastated. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and completely blindsided. I've always trusted Jake. We talked about marriage, kids, our future. The thought that he had been sneaking around with his ex for months while pretending everything was fine between us made me sick. He apologized repeatedly, saying he was confused and that he never meant to hurt me. He also claimed that the night they spent together didn't mean anything, that it was just a lapse in judgment, and that he wanted to be with me. He begged me not to end our relationship. I didn't know what to do. On the one hand, I felt like I should just walk away. It felt like such a huge betrayal, and I couldn't imagine continuing to trust him after this. On the other hand, I still loved him. I've never had any issues with him before, and part of me wanted to believe him when he said he made a mistake. But could I really move past this? I asked him to leave the apartment for the night so I could think. He was upset, but I needed space to clear my head. I spent the whole night crying and agonizing over what to do. I talked to a few close friends about it, and they were all divided. Some said I should walk away immediately. Others said I should try to forgive him and see if he could prove that he was truly sorry. The next day, Jay called and asked if we could talk. He said he wanted to make things right and would do whatever it took to prove that he was committed to me. I was torn. I still love him, but I don't know if I can get over this. The trust is broken, and I don't know if I'll ever feel the same way about him again. So, Reddit, AITA for confronting him in the first place? And am I wrong for thinking that this might be the end of our relationship? Or should I try to work through it? I'm really struggling with this, and I'd appreciate any advice or thoughts. Thanks in advance. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. I, 28F, have been friends with Lily, 30F, since college. We were roommates for 2 years and have always been super close. We went through some major life stuff together, breakups, family drama, and career shifts. I've always been the type to go above and beyond for my friends. If someone I care about needs help, I'm there. And I guess that's part of the reason why what happened recently hit me so hard. Lily got engaged to Mark, 31M, last year, and they started planning their wedding. It was clear from the beginning that Lily wanted everything to be perfect, which I totally understood. We've always joked about how she's a bit of a perfectionist, but I didn't mind. I was happy for her. As soon as she started planning, she started asking me to help out. It started small. Hey, can you help me pick out bridesmaid dresses? And eventually snowballed into full-on wedding prep. I helped with everything from researching photographers to coordinating with the caterers. I even made her a mood board for the wedding colors. I thought it was fun, honestly. We got to hang out, and it felt good to be helping her achieve the dream wedding she wanted. But the real issue started when she asked me to be her maid of honor. I was over the moon. I mean, I've been there for her through everything, and I thought it was an honor that she wanted me in that role. I said yes immediately and started planning my duties. I bought the dress, helped her plan the bridal shower, and made sure the bridal party had everything they needed for the big day. I was so involved, I felt like I was a second bride, which was fine with me because I loved Lily and I wanted to make her day as perfect as possible. Fast forward a few months, and I started to notice something odd. Lily wasn't as responsive to my texts or calls about the wedding. She'd always get back to me with a brief response, but it was clear she was avoiding deeper conversations about details. At first, I thought it was just stress. Weddings can be overwhelming, right? But then, a few weeks before the wedding, I found out that Lily had been planning her bachelorette party without telling me. At first, I thought it was a mistake. She just didn't mention it to me, maybe? So, I casually asked her about it, saying something like, "Hey, what's the plan for your bachelorette party? Should I be helping organize anything?" She paused for a long time and then just said, "Oh, I'm having a small thing with a few close friends. It's already sorted." That threw me off. I asked who was going, and she listed the names of her other friends. I wasn't on the list. I wasn't even mentioned. That stung, but I brushed it off because I figured maybe she just wanted it to be a smaller, more intimate gathering. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. A week before the wedding, Lily told me she needed to talk. We met for coffee, and she told me that I wouldn't be in the bridal party anymore. She said it was nothing personal, but she had decided to keep the wedding party smaller, and there were too many people to consider. She said she still wanted me to be at the wedding, but just couldn't have me standing up there with her. I was shocked. I mean, I had been helping her with this wedding for months. I had literally taken on the role of maid of honor, and now I wasn't even going to be in the bridal party. I asked her what happened, and she gave me a vague response about how she had to make some tough decisions and that it was nothing personal. I didn't know how to respond, so I just said, "Okay," and left the coffee shop. Honestly, I was devastated. I was hurt and confused. Was it because I had done too much? Was it because she didn't feel the same way about our friendship anymore? The day of the wedding came, and I showed up as a guest, which felt so weird. I hadn't been in that role for years, especially after everything I had done. But I smiled, congratulated Lily and Mark, and tried to have a good time, even though I was internally wrecked. I made small talk with other guests and avoided making a scene, but I couldn't stop thinking about how things had turned out. Later that night, during the reception, I saw Lily having a blast with her other bridesmaids. They were laughing, dancing, and taking pictures together. I felt like a ghost. I wasn't part of her special day in the way I thought I would be, and it was crushing. The next week, I texted Lily to ask if we could talk. I told her I was confused and hurt about the whole situation and needed some clarity. She apologized but still insisted that it wasn't personal and that she just had to make some difficult decisions. I told her that it felt like I had been used for my help, but discarded when it was time to be in the spotlight. She didn't have much to say in response, just that she didn't mean to hurt me and that she hoped we could still be friends. I haven't spoken to Lily much since then. I still don't understand why she made the decision she did. Part of me wants to just let it go, but another part of me feels like I've been completely disrespected and that I deserve an apology. I'm so torn between wanting to salvage our friendship and feeling like I've been taken advantage of. So, AITA for confronting my friend about not inviting me to be a part of her wedding after everything I did for her. Or was I just being too sensitive and should I just let it go? I, 28M, have a younger brother, Greg, 25M, who recently got engaged to his fiancée, Lisa, 24F. They've been together for about 3 years, and honestly, I wasn't a big fan of Lisa when they first started dating. She's kind of, well, blunt. I'm sure she's a nice person, but she has a tendency to be a little too forward with her opinions and doesn't always take others' feelings into account. That said, she's been nothing but polite to me and my fiancée, Sarah, 27F, over the years, so I've let my initial reservation slide. Sarah and I have been together for 4 years now, and we're pretty serious. We're planning to get married ourselves in the next year or so, but for now, we're just enjoying life and figuring things out. My brother Greg has been planning his wedding for months, and about 2 weeks ago, they sent out formal invitations to family and close friends. I RSVP'd immediately, and Sarah and I started planning our outfits. Sarah asked me what she should wear, and I said I didn't think it would be a big deal. It's a wedding, so she should just dress nicely, but nothing too over the top. Sarah tends to dress in a very casual, laid-back style. She likes comfortable clothing, but always looks put together. A typical outfit for her might include a simple sundress or a pair of nice jeans with a blouse. Nothing that would stand out as inappropriate, but not overly formal either. That's how she feels comfortable. I don't think it's anything unusual, but Greg and Lisa do not agree. Last week, Greg called me and told me that he was concerned about Sarah's outfit for the wedding. He said that he had heard from some people in the family that Sarah dresses too casually and that it might distract from the formality of the event. I thought he was joking at first, but he was serious. He said that Sarah's style didn't match the tone of the wedding, and he wanted me to talk to her and have her dress more appropriately. I was taken aback. First of all, I don't think Sarah's clothing choices are inappropriate. She's not going to show up in ripped jeans or anything too casual like that. Secondly, it seemed like an odd thing for Greg to be focusing on. I mean, this is his wedding we're talking about, and there's so many other things that should be a priority, like the venue, the guest list, and the overall feel of the day. But Greg seemed laser-focused on Sarah's outfit. I told him that I didn't think there was any issue with what Sarah was planning to wear, and if it was such a big deal, I would let her know. Greg, however, wasn't satisfied with that. He said he would prefer if Sarah didn't attend the wedding if she wasn't going to take the event seriously and wear something more formal. He said it would be awkward and embarrassing if she showed up in something too casual. I was floored. I've known Greg my whole life, and I've never seen him get so fixated on something so minor. I told him I thought it was unfair to ask Sarah to change who she is just for the wedding. If she wasn't good enough for the wedding as she is, then maybe it wasn't the kind of wedding I wanted to attend. Greg got angry and said that if I wasn't willing to have a conversation with Sarah about it, then maybe I shouldn't come at all. I tried to reason with him, but he wasn't having it. He ended the conversation by saying, "If you can't respect our wishes, then I guess we don't need you at the wedding." I hung up the phone, and I immediately told Sarah what had happened. She was upset, but said she didn't want to cause any drama. I told her that I wasn't going to be bullied into telling her how to dress, and we agreed that I should just not go to the wedding if Greg was going to be so fixated on it. I didn't respond to Greg's text, and a few days later, he sent me another message saying that he was disappointed in my attitude and that it was sad I wouldn't support him on his big day. He said he had always been there for me, and this was something I should get over. It's been a week since the last message, and I haven't budged. I still don't think it's right that Greg would ask Sarah to change who she is just to fit his image of what a wedding should look like. I've also heard from a few family members that Greg and Lisa have been talking badly about me behind my back, saying I'm taking sides and ruining the family dynamic. Sarah and I are considering not even attending the wedding at all. I've already made my decision, but Sarah feels bad about it because she's always been close to my family. She doesn't want me to lose my relationship with Greg over this, but at the same time, she feels like the request was unfair. So, AITA for refusing to go to my brother's wedding because he disinvited my fiancée over her outfit. AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law stay with me after she criticized my parenting. I, 31F, have a 2-year-old daughter, Emma, and I've been married to my husband, Mark, 33, for 5 years. We live in a small but cozy house in a suburban neighborhood, and life has been pretty good. Recently, we've had some issues with Mark's sister, Rachel, 28, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm in the wrong here. Rachel has always been a bit of a free spirit. She's never really had a stable job, always jumps from one thing to another, and generally lacks any kind of responsibility. She's been in and out of relationships and is known for being a bit of a drama queen. But she's family, and while she's not someone I'd consider close to me, I've always tried to be kind. We've invited her over for family events. I try to make sure she feels included, and I've even helped her out financially a few times when she was struggling. A few weeks ago, Rachel called me out of the blue asking if she could stay with us for a few days. She said she was having issues with her roommate and needed a place to crash while she figured things out. Now, I've always been cautious about having people stay with us for extended periods, especially since we got a toddler running around, but I agreed. Mark and I talked it over, and he said it'd be fine, especially since Rachel was going through a tough time. I'm usually the one who handles most of the household stuff, cooking, cleaning, managing Emma's schedule, while Mark helps where he can, but he works long hours, so I'm often juggling a lot. I don't mind doing it, but it's also a lot to manage. When Rachel moved in, I made it clear that while she was welcome, there were some ground rules. I told her we have a pretty tight routine, and if she was staying with us, she'd need to respect Emma's nap time, the need for quiet in the evenings, and help out a bit with the housework. Nothing extravagant, just common courtesy. At first, everything seemed fine. Rachel was polite, stayed in her room most of the time, and didn't seem to mind the rhythm of our family life. However, after a few days, she started making comments about my parenting style, and that's when things went downhill. One morning, Emma was having a tantrum because she didn't want to eat her breakfast. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary, toddler stuff. I was trying to stay calm, offering her alternatives, and generally doing my best to manage the situation without escalating it. Rachel, who had been sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone, suddenly chimed in. You're just coddling her. You're giving in to her. That's why she's like this. You should be more firm. You're just enabling her behavior. I was taken aback. Emma was 2, and I don't believe in being overly harsh with toddlers. They're learning how to manage big emotions, and I try to offer comfort and guidance rather than punishment. But Rachel continued, look at how you're handling it. She's running the show here. You need to set boundaries, or she's going to end up a nightmare. I try to keep my cool. I'm not a confrontational person, and I didn't want to start drama, especially with her living in my house. But I wasn't okay with her undermining my parenting choices, especially when she's never had kids of her own. I told her politely, I appreciate the advice, Rachel, but I know what works best for Emma and me. If you're uncomfortable with how I handle things, maybe it would be better if you stayed somewhere else for a bit. Rachel didn't take kindly to that. She got defensive and said, I'm just trying to help. You're going to mess her up if you keep this up. The conversation ended awkwardly, and I tried to brush it off. However, things didn't improve. The next few days were filled with more criticism. She would comment on how I let Emma watch TV, how I didn't discipline her enough, and even commented on how I dressed Emma. Isn't that outfit a little too much for a toddler? She asked once. She looks like she's trying to act older than she is. I was getting fed up, but I tried to stay calm. Finally, things reached a breaking point when Rachel started saying things like, no wonder Emma has such a hard time with her emotions. She doesn't have any structure. You should try having a schedule for her instead of just letting her do whatever she wants. That was the last straw for me. I had a routine for Emma, and it worked well for her. I'm a firm believer in the importance of a child's emotional well-being, and while I don't believe in being overindulgent, I do think toddlers need emotional support, not harsh discipline. I pulled Mark aside that night and told him I was at my limit. Rachel wasn't respecting our home, our routine, or our parenting. Mark agreed that she'd been a little overbearing, but he didn't want to cause any family drama. He said we should give it another day or two and see if things calm down. I was frustrated, but agreed to give it a little more time. The next morning, Rachel made another comment about Emma's tantrums, and I lost it. I told Rachel that it wasn't working, that I didn't appreciate her constant criticism, and that she needed to leave. Rachel was stunned and upset. She asked why I was kicking her out after everything she had done for us. She helped clean up once, which I didn't think was much to write home about. I told her that I didn't want to host someone who kept belittling me and my parenting choices, and that if she couldn't respect our boundaries, it was better she leave. Mark got involved at that point and tried to mediate. He said I was being too harsh, but I stood my ground. After some back and forth, Rachel left that afternoon. She was angry and said I was too sensitive and didn't appreciate her help. Mark and I ended up having a huge argument, and while we eventually calmed down, things still feel tense between us. Now, Mark's family is upset with me for kicking Rachel out. They think I should have toughed it out and that I overreacted. I feel like I made the right decision, but the constant criticism was starting to affect me emotionally, and I don't think I should have to tolerate it in my own home. So, AITA for refusing to let Rachel stay with us after she criticized my parenting. AITA for not paying my best friend's rent after she asked me to co-sign her lease, and I refused. I, 29F, have been best friends with Lily, 30F, for about 10 years. We've been through a lot together, from school to breakups to moving across the country. We were always there for each other, and I genuinely thought we had a friendship built on mutual trust and respect. Last year, Lily moved into a new city for a job opportunity, and things seemed to be going well for her. She was living in a relatively affordable apartment with a roommate, but they decided to part ways because of some personal conflicts. She started looking for a new place and was feeling stressed about finding something within her budget. That's when she asked me for help. She called me one day, asking if I would co-sign her lease for an apartment she had found. She explained that the rent was a bit above her budget, and because she hadn't been in her new job for long, the landlord was hesitant to approve her application without a co-signer. Lily assured me that she could afford the rent, that she just needed someone to co-sign as a formality, and that she would take care of everything financially. I love Lily, but I wasn't comfortable co-signing. I've had my own financial struggles in the past, and I know the risk involved in co-signing someone's lease. If she couldn't make the payments, I would be on the hook for them. And while I trust her, I don't trust that life won't throw unexpected curveballs at either of us. I told her I wasn't comfortable with co-signing, but I would help in other ways if I could. She wasn't happy about it, but said she understood. I assumed that would be the end of it. However, a few weeks later, she called me again, this time asking me to pay a portion of her rent for the first couple of months. She said she was having a hard time financially because of moving expenses, and she wanted to ensure she didn't get behind on her rent. She explained that her new job wasn't paying as much as she expected, and she was waiting for a paycheck to catch up on some of her bills. This was the first time I was really taken aback. I've always been supportive of her, but asking me to pay rent felt like a major boundary crossing. I tried to be understanding, but I couldn't get past the fact that this was something I simply couldn't afford. I told her I could help out with some smaller things, like a grocery run or helping her look for cheaper apartments, but I wasn't going to pay her rent. She got upset and accused me of not being there for her when she needed me. She said that if I really cared about her, I would be willing to help her out in this situation, especially after I had refused to co-sign her lease. She said I was essentially abandoning her when she was in a tough spot, and that hurt. It made me feel like I was being painted as the villain just for setting a financial boundary. I tried explaining that I couldn't afford to pay rent for someone else, especially when I have my own bills to take care of, but she seemed to ignore my point. She kept saying that I was just being selfish and that real friends should help each other out in times of need. No questions asked. This made me feel incredibly guilty, but at the same time, I also felt frustrated because I had already said no, and she just kept pushing. After that conversation, things started to get awkward between us. I noticed she became distant, and whenever we hung out, she would bring up how hard things were for her, how the rent was stressing her out, and how her financial situation was just a mess. It felt like a constant guilt trip, and I started to feel like I was the one in the wrong for not offering to help her out. Eventually, I reached out to her and told her that I didn't want our friendship to suffer because of this, but I needed her to respect my decision. I told her that I wasn't going to be able to give her money, and that while I understood she was in a tough spot, it wasn't fair for her to keep pushing me for something I simply couldn't do. She responded with a text saying that she was disappointed in me and that she felt like our friendship wasn't as important to me as it was to her. She said I was being unreasonable and that she didn't think she could continue being friends with someone who couldn't support her in the way she needed. That text was a punch to the gut. I felt like I was being manipulated, but also like I was losing one of my closest friends. We've never had an argument like this before, and it really hurt. We haven't spoken in a few weeks now, and while I'm still open to talking, I'm also starting to feel like maybe I'm better off without someone who thinks financial support is the only way to show you care. So, AITA for not paying my best friend's rent after she asked me to co-sign her lease, and I refused. AITA for not letting my friend bring her emotional support dog to my wedding. My 28F wedding was just a few weeks ago, and honestly, it was the best day of my life. It took a lot of planning, especially considering how much I wanted everything to be perfect. The venue, the decorations, the dress, the food, the photographer, everything had to be just right. And I was lucky to have an amazing group of people helping me with all the details. But one issue that's been hanging over me is a situation with my childhood friend, Ella, 29F, and her emotional support dog, Milo. Ella and I have known each other since we were kids. We've been through a lot together, and she's one of my closest friends. She has anxiety and has mentioned before that Milo really helped her manage it. I've never been one to judge her for needing an emotional support animal. After all, we all have our things, right? But the issue came up when Ella asked if she could bring Milo to my wedding. I've been very clear from the beginning that I wanted the wedding to be a formal, elegant affair. It's something I've dreamed of for years, and I made a point of communicating my vision to everyone involved. The venue I chose has a strict no pets policy, and the last thing I wanted was to create a situation where the atmosphere could be disrupted. So when Ella asked if Milo could attend, I told her that pets wouldn't be allowed at the wedding for any reason. At first, she seemed understanding, but then she started insisting more and more. She said that Milo is her emotional support animal and that he helps her with her anxiety, especially in high-stress situations. She argued that I should make an exception for her because he's not just a pet. He's a necessary part of her mental health routine. I explained that I completely understood her need for Milo, but the wedding was not the place for him. I didn't want to deal with potential issues like him barking, disrupting the ceremony, or just generally being out of place in such a formal setting. Ella wasn't happy with my response, and honestly, I didn't want to upset her, but I felt like I had to stand firm on my decision. It was my big day, and I had a specific vision for it. I told her that if she really felt she couldn't come without him, I understood if she decided to skip the wedding, but that pets were not allowed. She seemed okay with this at first, but then I received several messages from her over the next few days, saying things like, "I understand if you don't want to make an exception, but I just don't know if I can come without Milo, and I really wish you could be more understanding of my situation." To be honest, I started to feel guilty. Maybe I wasn't being empathetic enough. After all, I wanted her there, and I knew how important Milo was to her. But I couldn't shake the feeling that if I let one person bring their dog, it would set a precedent, and then it would be harder to control other requests. I had already planned for certain guests with allergies, children, and other special needs, and this felt like another complication I didn't want to deal with. Eventually, I told Ella that I couldn't make any exceptions. She was upset, and our communication started to deteriorate. She even told me that I was selfish for not being more understanding of her needs, and that by not allowing Milo to come, I was showing how little I cared about her mental health. That hit hard, but I still stuck to my decision. I really wanted her there, but I wasn't about to compromise on my wedding day for something that didn't fit with the atmosphere I envisioned. The night before the wedding, I got a text from Ella saying she wouldn't be coming. It was short and to the point. "I can't make it without Milo. Hope it's a beautiful day for you." I was devastated, but also felt like I had made the right decision for myself and my wedding. The next few days were filled with messages from mutual friends who had heard about the situation. Some were supportive, telling me I had every right to prioritize my wedding vision. while others thought I was being too rigid and unkind. Some said they understood that it was my big day, but I shouldn't have been so strict with her, especially since she has a mental health condition. A couple of people even said I was being a bad friend for not accommodating her emotional support animal. I've been thinking a lot about this, and while I know I didn't want to bend on my wedding vision, I still feel like maybe I could have handled the situation differently. Part of me wonders if I should have made an exception for her and let Milo come, even if it wasn't ideal. At the same time, I can't help but think that if I gave in to this request, other people might have started making similar demands, and it would have turned my wedding into something completely different than I had imagined. So, AITA for not letting my friend bring her emotional support dog to my wedding. So, this story starts a few months ago when I, 27F, got a call from my sister, 25F, asking if she could stay with me for a while. She told me that she was having some issues with her apartment, but I later found out the real reason she needed to leave. Let me backtrack a bit. My sister and I have always had a complicated relationship. We're close in some ways, but there's also a lot of tension between us. She's always been more the rebellious type, while I've tried to keep things more stable in my life. Growing up, she was always the one getting into trouble, sneaking out, and making bad decisions. I'm more of a planner, a by-the-book type of person. So, we've always clashed on that level, but I've tried to be supportive of her as much as I can. Anyway, when she called me about needing to stay at my place, I asked her what was going on, and she told me that her landlord was evicting her because of some personal issues and that she just needed a little time to figure things out. I said sure, no problem, and told her to come over. What she didn't tell me right away was that she was pregnant. And not just pregnant by a married man. I found this out when she came to stay with me a few days later and started crying about how she didn't know what to do. She told me she was pregnant by this guy she'd been seeing on and off for about a year. He's married with 2 kids. She said she didn't want to keep the baby, but she didn't feel right about abortion, and the whole situation was just a mess. It turns out the guy had told her that he would leave his wife for her, but that never happened. She was left in a situation where her entire world had flipped upside down, and she had no idea what to do. At first, I was just stunned. This guy was married, had kids, and clearly wasn't willing to make good on his promises to her. I didn't know what to say. My immediate thought was that I couldn't just sit there and pretend everything was okay. But I tried to be supportive like any good sister would. I told her I would help her figure things out, but that I needed her to be honest with me moving forward. The next few days were a blur. I tried to talk her through her options and really push for her to seek therapy, as it seemed like she was struggling with a lot more than just the pregnancy. She'd been in unhealthy relationships before, and I was worried that this guy had really messed with her head. But she kept going on about how much she loved him and how she thought maybe things would work out in the long run. I couldn't understand why she was so obsessed with someone who was obviously not going to leave his family. The whole thing felt like a train wreck waiting to happen, but I didn't want to push her too hard. I also didn't want to make her feel worse, since she was already going through so much. But here's where things started to get tricky. After a week or so of her staying with me, I realized she hadn't really been trying to fix her situation. She was just wallowing in it. She wasn't getting any closer to making a decision about the baby, and she wasn't even trying to find a new apartment. Every day, she would just lay around, cry, or scroll through social media looking for validation from people who were in her same situation. Meanwhile, I was going to work, trying to keep my life on track, and doing my best to take care of my own mental health. The tipping point came when I found out that she had been texting this married man nonstop, even though he had told her over and over again that he wasn't leaving his wife. He would send her these vague, flirtatious messages, and she would respond, feeding into the cycle. It was like she was addicted to the drama, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I tried to confront her about it, but she just got defensive, saying I didn't understand what she was going through. I told her that I couldn't keep enabling her to act like this, and that I needed her to take responsibility for her actions. It wasn't just the relationship drama that bothered me. It was the fact that she had come to me for help and wasn't making any progress. She wasn't making any effort to better herself, and it was starting to wear me down. I had a life of my own, and I couldn't afford to keep picking up the pieces for her. I told her she needed to either figure things out or leave. I couldn't have her stay with me indefinitely while she refused to take any real steps forward. Well, she didn't take that well. She accused me of not caring about her, of abandoning her when she needed me the most. She told me that I was just like everyone else in her life who always judged her and made her feel worthless. I honestly didn't know how to respond to that. I wasn't judging her, but I was tired of watching her sabotage her own life and make excuses for why she couldn't do better. I ended up asking her leave. I gave her a couple of weeks to find somewhere else to stay, and she moved in with a friend who has a much more laid-back approach to these things. But now, she's not speaking to me, and our relationship is super strained. She says I'm cold-hearted and that I should have been there for her, but all I see is a woman who is unwilling to help herself. I don't know what I was supposed to do. I tried to support her, but it was clear she wasn't ready to face reality. So, AITA for kicking my sister out and not letting her stay with me anymore after everything went down. I feel like I did what I needed to do, but now I'm wondering if I should have handled it differently. I just don't know where to go from here, and I'm really questioning whether I did the right thing. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she tried to pressure me into being her bridesmaid after what she did to me. I, 29M, have a sister, Sarah, 31F, and we've always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, Sarah was always the golden child in the family. She was the one who got all the attention, the one who got the bigger birthday parties, and the one who always got her way. I was often seen as the problem child in comparison, and I guess I just didn't fit into her mold of perfection. Over the years, this dynamic really took a toll on me. I felt like I was constantly overshadowed by her, and that anything I did wasn't good enough. As I got older, I distanced myself from her, but the emotional scars never really healed. I got along with our parents, but I always felt like Sarah was the one they prioritized. If I ever confronted her about how she treated me, she'd dismiss it as me being too sensitive or jealous. When Sarah got engaged a year ago, I honestly didn't think much of it first. I had no desire to be involved in any wedding drama, but she seemed to want to rekindle a relationship of sorts with me. One day, she invited me over for coffee and casually dropped the bombshell that she wanted me to be one of her bridesmaids. I was taken aback. Wait, what? Why? I asked, trying not to sound rude. Well, we're sisters, right? It'd be nice to have you as part of my wedding party. I thought we could put the past behind us, she said with a warm smile. I wasn't sure what to say. I hadn't seen any indication that she wanted to repair things between us, and honestly, the idea of standing next to her on her big day felt like a joke. It wasn't that I didn't love her. I did in my own way, but after years of being emotionally neglected, I didn't feel like a bridesmaid was a position I was ever going to fit in. I appreciate the offer, but I don't think I can do that, I said, trying to be diplomatic. Her smile faltered for a second, but then she recovered. Oh, no worries, just thought I'd ask. But that was only the beginning. She kept pushing the issue over the next few months. Every time we talked about the wedding, she would try to convince me again. Are you sure? It's really important to me. I've been thinking, and I really want to make things right between us. It would mean a lot if you could be in my wedding party. The subtle pressure was overwhelming. I eventually told her flat out that I wasn't comfortable being a bridesmaid and that I didn't think it was a good idea considering our past. I told her that if she really wanted to have a good relationship, she needed to acknowledge the way she treated me over the years instead of just pretending everything was fine now. She didn't take that well. She got defensive and accused me of being bitter and unwilling to move on. You really can't let go of the past, can you? It's like you want to hold on to this forever. I'm trying to be nice, and you're making it hard, she said, her tone getting sharper. I'm not holding on to the past, I replied. I just don't feel like being a part of something that doesn't feel genuine to me. That was the last time we spoke in person before the wedding. Fast forward a few months, and the wedding is right around the corner. I started to hear more details through our parents and family friends. Apparently, Sarah was telling everyone how I was being difficult and refusing to support her. It was frustrating, but not surprising. I had a feeling she'd try to paint me as the villain. I'm used to it at this point. Then, a couple of weeks before the wedding, Sarah called me again. This time, the conversation was different. She was furious. Mom and Dad are really upset with you, she said. They can't believe you're refusing to come to my wedding. This is a huge moment for me, and you can't even put aside your petty issues to be there for me. Her words hit me hard. Of course, Our parents were on her side. They always were. I told her I wasn't going to change my mind about being a bridesmaid, but that I'd still attend the wedding as a guest. I'm not going to let this day be about me, but I don't want to make a scene. I'll be there. But that wasn't enough for Sarah. She demanded more. No, that's not good enough. You have to be there for me. You're my sister. I'm asking for your support, and you're acting like I'm asking for something impossible. I tried to explain that I didn't feel comfortable being in the wedding party, but she just couldn't understand why I wouldn't put her first. It's my big day, she screamed. You're so selfish, do you know that? After hanging up, I sat there, feeling a mix of frustration and sadness. I realized that no matter how much I tried to explain myself, she wasn't hearing me. She wasn't hearing me. She was hearing someone who was supposed to cater to her every need and be a reflection of what she wanted. I thought about it for a while and finally came to a conclusion. I couldn't go to her wedding. I just couldn't. After everything that had happened, after the way she had treated me for years, I wasn't going to subject myself to her toxic environment just because it was her big day. It wasn't worth it. The day before the wedding, I texted her, I'm not coming to the wedding. I can't be a part of something that feels like a betrayal of myself. I hope you understand. The fallout from that text was exactly what I expected. Sarah sent me an angry message accusing me of ruining everything and making her wedding about me. Our parents called me, crying, telling me that I was ruining the family's reputation. They said I was being petty and selfish, but I just couldn't be part of something that didn't feel right. I couldn't keep sacrificing my own emotional well-being just to make her happy. Now, I'm being labeled as the bad guy, and I'm questioning whether I made the right choice. So, AITA for refusing to give my sister-in-law a loan after she kept accusing me of being selfish? I, 28F, have been married to my husband, 30M, for 4 years. We're pretty stable financially, live in a modest but comfortable house, and we don't have kids yet. My family is very close-knit, and so is my husband's. However, the relationship between my sister-in-law, 30F, Sarah, and I has always been rocky, to say the least. To give some background, Sarah and I have never really gotten along. She's always been very self-centered and demanding, and whenever there's a family event, she tends to make everything about her. If she's not the center of attention, she sulks or gets passive-aggressive. My husband and I have always tried to be understanding, but there's only so much you can take before it gets exhausting. Despite all this, I've always been civil to her because I didn't want to cause any issues between our families. A few weeks ago, Sarah reached out to me privately and asked if I could lend her $10,000. She said she was in a tight spot financially and needed the money to pay off some debts that had accumulated due to her unforeseen medical expenses. She mentioned that she would be able to pay me back in full within 6 months, but she also made it clear that she didn't want to ask anyone else for the money because she knew they'd judge her. To me, this sounded a bit suspicious because Sarah has a history of spending money impulsively, especially on things like luxury clothes, expensive vacations, and the like. I'd seen her blow thousands on clothes and gadgets that she didn't need. So when she came to me with this crisis, I was immediately wary. I explained to her that I couldn't lend her that kind of money. My reasons were simple. I don't have that much in liquid savings, and even if I did, I'm not comfortable lending that amount of money to someone with such a questionable financial history. I told her that I could help in other ways, like helping her find a financial advisor or maybe assisting with setting up a budget, but I just couldn't hand over that much money. She was not happy with my response and started to argue that it was selfish of me to refuse when I had the means to help her. She kept saying that I owed it to her because we're family and that I should be willing to help her like I'd expect help if I were in her position. I tried to remain calm and explain that just because we're family doesn't mean I should give her money I can't afford to lose. She told me that I was being unreasonable and cold-hearted because I was the only one in the family who could afford it. I told her again that even if I could afford it, I wasn't willing to lend her that much money given her spending habits and history of not paying people back. The conversation got pretty tense, and she ended up saying some hurtful things. She called me a selfish, greedy person and said that my refusal to help her would only prove that I wasn't the kind of family member she thought I was. I told her I wasn't going to engage in the conversation further and ended the call. The next day, I was at a family dinner when Sarah brought it up again. She was still upset, and she told everyone that I had refused to lend her the money and that I'd been rude to her about it. She framed the situation like I was some villain who just didn't care about family. Several people in the room seemed shocked, and a couple of them sided with her, saying I should have helped her out since I had the means to do so. My husband was silent, which I found odd because he knows the full context of the situation, and I was hoping he would defend me. Later that evening, my mother-in-law pulled me aside and said that I needed to make it right because this was tearing the family apart. She said that Sarah had been suffering and that I needed to be the bigger person and help her out. I tried to explain again that I couldn't afford to lend her that much money, but my mother-in-law was adamant that I was being too rigid and needed to be more understanding. It felt like she was trying to guilt-trip me into doing something I wasn't comfortable with. I'm now stuck in a weird situation where some of my in-laws are upset with me, and Sarah keeps making passive-aggressive comments about me being a bad family member. My husband has mostly stayed neutral, but I can tell he's uncomfortable with the tension. I try to make it clear that I'm not opposed to helping her in other ways, but the financial loan is a hard no. Some of my family members have also reached out to me privately, expressing that they think I should have just given her the money to keep the peace, but I'm honestly not sure if I'm in the wrong here. So, AITA for refusing to lend my sister-in-law $10,000 when she's been irresponsible with her money in the past, even though some of my family members think I should have helped her out? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.